Let me ask you something.
Yo.
Do you feel any pressure because of your name, David, trying to match what David did in the Bible? Because there's
Now, when you ask
David in the
that
Bible and
question,
there's David Gutierrez. Like that's
yeah, yeah.
somewhat unequal in comparison to
Well, and I'd say it's unequal in a
what
couple
was
ways. One,
accomplished.
yeah, I don't think, I mean, it's too late, right? Like the Messiah is not going to come from my lineage. Also, most likely not going to become a king, and I would love to be called a man after God's own heart. However, there's certain elements too, like adulterer and murderer, not really aspiring to achieve
You don't want
those aspects. So I think God creates us all for a
yeah.
purpose, and it's
Mm.
our purpose for Him to live through us. And I don't believe David and I share. So no, I feel zero pressure.
Feel pressure. Okay. Just I was just
Yeah.
wondering. I was just curious if that ever
No.
crossed your
Yeah.
mind.
No, no, there's a lot of aspects, David, that are incredible. I'm not overly trying to match the other aspects either though, right? Like yeah, I'm good with the no adultery, no murder thing. Now, that being said, there's a conversation in that on Jesus' standard and what he calls adultery and murder. We won't. That's not the point of this podcast necessarily, but that's a whole interesting conversation in and of itself as well,
Yeah.
because the standard's pretty dang high. And for murder, it's if you have anger in your heart against your brother. Adultery, if you've looked at a woman lustfully, and you lusted with in your heart, and those two things. So I guess I am I guess I am a murderer and a adulterer,
Pretty high standard.
according to that standard. But it's funny you talk about that pressure, and there's something that we're going through the Bible in a year, and one of the things that you and I preach about is, reading books. Huge believer in reading books. Love reading, and really though the key part about reading is implementation, right? Like you shouldn't read. I don't. For me, I should not read the Bible just to click off our app and get a check mark on the day and see where everybody else is and have a little competition. I should
Although
read.
that happens too.
That happens too, but I should really read the Bible and see how it can actually apply to my life, challenge me, challenge my thinking, and really help me to consider whether or not I'm living the life that I truly want to live as a man of God and as a believer and follower of Jesus Christ. And so we've been in we spent quite a bit of time, the um, Samuel and Kings, both each has two books, a lot of David in those books, and at the beginning of Kings, where we are right now. um, it's fascinating to me where this the applicability of this Old Testament, and these stories about David has really challenged me in a way that I think is fascinating, right? And I think a lot of us suffer from this idea that we're not good enough, or we're never going to match up, or the pressure of sharing a name with King David, um, or just the idea that I'm not where I should be to be used most effectively by God. And Kings, we were talking beforehand, and I'm just like, man, David, like baller in a lot of ways, but man, like also had some pretty tremendous, you know, um, I mean, just falls from grace, and very repentant. One of my
I mean,
favorite
let's just call it straight up failures.
yeah, straight up
Right.
failures, right? And one of my favorite Psalms is Psalm 51, and it's a psalm that came from the story. I think it was the end of it was in Samuel when David sends oh my gosh, what's his name? Hittite. He's a Hittite. The Hittite, Bathsheba's husband. Why am I blanking on his name? Oh boy. Anyways,
Yeah.
Bathsheba's husband, one of David's a great warrior, right? And as you look in Samuel, it actually breaks down these stories and who these people were, and it's pretty cool. He's part of like the top 30 soldiers, whatever. Anyways, so David sends him to his death, because he sees Bathsheba bathing and he wants Bathsheba, and so he effectively calls a hit on dude, and then goes and takes his wife, and they have a kid, and all that good stuff, right? But what's fascinating to me is
And it's Uriah,
in
Uriah the Hittite.
Uriah the Hittite. And after that happens, there's a guy named Nathan, and he came to David and he told a story, and he effectively set David up, right? He's like, well, there's this guy, and he has one sheep, and there's this rich guy who has a bunch of sheep, and the rich guy wanted this one sheep, and what would you do in that situation? He's like, oh, that rich guy, that guy with all the sheep, he's a terrible guy, he's terrible, and Nathan's like, that's you, dude, like that's you.
Yeah.
And David's like, and David immediately repents. And then from that is Psalm 51, which is really cool, which is, like I said, one of my favorite Psalms. And it's interesting to me that despite all of these things, and I love it, it's encouraging to me, I should say, that God still uses David in mighty ways. And there are consequences, right? Like David had a couple sons who tried to take his throne from him, and he had a lot of like tragedy and deaths of children and all kinds of tragedy, and there's consequences to these kind of actions, but God still was faithful and he used him in mighty ways. And what that tells me, there's so many of us that are just waiting on the sidelines, myself included in a lot of ways, just waiting on the sidelines for the time to be perfect, for me to have things, my life in order, to be who I believe I should be before I take action to be the man that I want to be. And dude, it's just not true, right? It's just not true. It's a lie. I think it's a lie told by Satan to keep us on the sideline, to keep us from our purpose. And so when I read these stories, when I read this history, I'm so encouraged at not only the abundant grace and the abundant mercy and forgiveness of God, but also despite all my shortcomings and everything that I am that's not positive, which is a lot, God can still use me for his will, which is very encouraging.
Yeah, I think a lot of times we see some wealthy person that's given a lot of money, or some, leader of a church, or an author, or a pastor, or someone that's running some big nonprofit organization that's doing big things, and we compare ourselves to them, and we look up to them because, they're wealthier, they're mightier, they're doing bigger things, and they're doing more good, and then we look at ourselves and compare ourselves, and we're like, we're never going to be that, right? And so we think that we're less of someone, less of a disciple. And it reminds me of when you and I went to go have lunch with a gentleman here in Colorado, in Denver. He's a real estate investor, and he owns a lot of real estate, a lot of very, very expensive real estate, like huge commercial buildings downtown, like big, right? Like hundreds of millions of dollars, right? And when you initially look at that, you're like, oh man, like that's where I want to be, right? Because he's like using his business to give to donor advised funds, and support all these charities, and like do a ton of great stuff, involved with the city council, and like making waves, and like putting businesses together, and like all this stuff, right? And then we look at us, and we're like, we give 10% of our money to charity, like nowhere close to what he's doing. But he said something that has stuck with me and I thought was really important. And he said that we can all be disciples, and we can all be powerful disciples to use what we do for good. And sometimes, like the taxi driver, and he uses the story of the taxi driver, can be just as much or more of a disciple than some bigwig real estate investor. And he talked about his Uber driver that he took from the airport to downtown to go visit one of his properties. And the Uber driver loves being an Uber driver because he has so many opportunities to tell his passengers about Jesus. And he was asked like if he would ever want to change careers, and he's like, no, I love what I do because I have great conversations with people, and I have multiple opportunities a day to talk to them about my belief in Jesus. And if you think about it, the charge to go and make disciples, like that taxi driver has just as much or more of an opportunity to be a disciple than the bigwig real estate investor.
Well, it's funny because I was before you got into the story about the big wig real estate investor, who is a probably one of the most humble,
Yeah.
gracious dudes I've ever
Yeah.
met. He's an incredible human being. Um, my mind went somewhere different before we even started telling that story. I wanted to tell that. I want to tell a story about the same guy, which is funny, but from a different perspective. And do you remember what he said when he felt that he, for the kingdom of God, he felt that he was most effective? Do you remember what he said to us?
Just in his business serving his employees, right?
No, no. He said, I sometimes think I was living I was living my God-given purpose and passion more when I was a offshore fisherman. Remember he said that?
That's right.
Taking
Yep.
people out. And I was like, what? And he said, yeah, man, I sometimes think about those days and I reminisce on those days because I feel like I was being more mightily used by God when I was an offshore fisherman, a deckhand, like doing whatever it was that he was doing. I just found that fascinating as well, right? Because he truly believed what he was saying, and like I said, as a what he's doing in real estate is fascinating, and it's amazing how his heart for God. But dude, I'll tell you what impacted me most. It wasn't the we went into one of his big buildings and
Yeah.
beautiful location and just amazing. And what I most took note of was how he was like serving us. He was like, "Oh, let me get you a coffee. Let me take your dirty dishes. Let me, and he was just so gracious and kind. And it was such a breath of fresh. I was almost embarrassed to being served so kindly by
Yeah.
this guy. And that was the thing that stuck out to me is how he made me feel, right? It wasn't the real estate and all the stuff, which was amazing and incredible. It was the interperson, just the interaction that he had with us on a personal level. And it was a beautiful thing, right? Um, and I think that really encourages me that you just don't know, just be willing to be used. If you're willing to be used, then there's the opportunity and the potential is endless on what the impact you can make, and you won't even know it. Like I'm sure he doesn't think that made a huge impact on me and you in the ways that it did, right? And there's something that a prayer that I read every morning, and it's, Lord, let me make a difference for you that is utterly disproportionate to who I am. And I read that every morning because it reminds me, like, if it's in me, if it's dependent on me and my personality and my shortcomings, like, it ain't gonna happen, dude. It ain't gonna happen. But if it's God using me to make a difference, that is disproportionate to who I am, which only He can do, then, dude, we all can make a huge impact. And sometimes it's just saying hi to somebody. Sometimes it's just being kind. Sometimes, like, you don't know the life you could save by just being available and making a phone call or showing some support, love, whatever it is. And so that's the power of it, right? And that's where I love, like, even when you mess up mightily, the thing about David, he's in the Bible, so like he's under a he's under a microscope, and there's so many great things he did. And there's also a lot that wasn't great because he was a man. He was a dude. He wasn't God. He wasn't Jesus. He was a dude, a sinful dude. But he was totally sold out, right? He was totally sold out for Jesus. He repented and he continued down the path. He kept moving in the direction that God wanted him to move in, and he kept being used mightily.
Yeah. I mean, there's so many stories in the Bible of just regular humans that are sinners that have done and still doing really bad things, but they are used in a mightily, gracious and godly way to serve his purpose, his bigger plan. And we can be that same person, right? You know,
Dude,
just it's just the way
100%.
you show up. Just like, I mean, it doesn't have to be giving millions of dollars a year to organizations. It can be, like you said, saying hello to somebody, asking how their day was, serving them coffee, taking their dishes, giving somebody a ride home when their car broke down, like asking someone, if they can help in any way in your organization, like just being a good human, being kind, and like creating curiosity, right? Like creating curiosity in people, like, oh,
Hmm.
why is this, why is this dude different? Why is he so kind to me? Why is he so gracious? Why is he so humble? Like what is he doing? What does he have that maybe a little bit different than other people? And create curiosity, create opportunities and curate conversations that lead towards Jesus.
Well, this isn't purely just a Christian idea, right? There's a quote that crossed my whatever desk the other day, and it's Stoic. It's Marcus Aurelius. It was celebrated by the Stoics, and this quote is waste no more time arguing what a good man should be one, right? And I love that. I love that. It's like, let's stop wasting our time in whatever context, dude, in your Christian faith, in if you're a Stoic, whatever it is, you could find writings in anything that is that appeals to your identity, and it'll drive you towards action. Just be good. Like, what's the shirt? Everybody, there's shirts all over the place. Be kind. Right? Like, so it's so basic, but
Yeah.
it's on a shirt, and because it's so you don't see it, and it's like the exception. Just be kind. Like, just be kind. Just try that on. Just be kind. Be that person. And it's fascinating to me as we start working, as we start moving forward in action to be these people that we want to be. I mean, what did Gandhi say? Be the change you want to see in the world, right? Like, it just it's all action based, and just being that person, and whatever context you need to use to motivate you to do that, like, do that. And also, what I love about David is, in faith, I can see in faith that if I continue to move forward, and I continue to seek God, and I continue to love my neighbor as myself, and I continue to try to do these things despite all my failures, I still fully believe that in the end, it'll be credited for to us that we gave it our all, right? That we gave it our all. We got off the sideline. We didn't sit there and hope and wait to be something. We went out and became that thing, right?
And King David didn't end
No,
well.
dude. No, I
He
want
didn't
to
he didn't
read
end
this.
well.
This is I forgot about, like, I mean, it was only a couple of days ago that I read this, but I just want to read that. I love this. Dude, he ended like Godfather, straight gangster,
Yeah.
right? Like
Yeah.
like
Hey, Solomon.
he brought Solomon in, which, again, back to Solomon's lineage. Solomon was the offspring of
Sheba.
Bathsheba and
Yeah.
David, right? And he was not the oldest son, which back then traditionally the oldest son was the one who became the king. He was not. I forgot that guy's name. It started with A, Abishai or something. But he tried that oldest son tried to take the kingdom. David was like, no, Solomon. But this is the some of the ending instructions. And I say gangster because he like gave like straight vendetta. So he talked about Joab, who Joab was an army commander for David, and he did some shady things, killed a couple dudes. And David says, uh, he brought a stain to our family, this, that, and the other. And he goes, do with him what you think best, but don't let him grow old and go to his grave in peace. Like, he's like, do what you think is best, but like, don't let dude grow old, like straight up murder guy.
Straight,
Okay.
straight, straight up.
Uh,
Get rid of him.
Get rid of him. And then there's another guy. He's like, oh, and remember Shimei, I don't know, apologize for if I'm saying his name wrong, but he cursed me with terrible curse when I was fleeing, uh, blah, blah, blah. And then he ends this, he goes, he says, you are a wise man, Solomon. You're a wise man, and you will know how to arrange a bloody death for him. Like, he straight up says, you're a wise man. Again, like, I know you can figure it out, but like, you can figure out how to arrange a bloody death for this dude who insulted me a long time ago. So like, straight, and this guy too. And it just was fascinating to me that he effectively was like, dude, like, kill these guys, kill these guys. And that to me is not a great way to end. Like, you're not ending on a high note. You're not ending, you're bringing yourself back down into the mud. You're like, hey, and you're making your son culpable of he's complicit in these murders that'll make you, I guess, feel better in your grave. So it's just fascinating, right? But still, Solomon, despite that, was a dude that was known as the wisest king ever. Super effective, peace within Israel, United Kingdom, which was not the norm after like Israel and um, Judah had split after that war and faithlessness. He built the temple, right? Like David, that was not David's legacy. That was Solomon's. So a lot of good things still God used these men, and He can use us, right? He can use us despite your shortcomings in your personality and your face, you specifically. God can still use you.
Dude, I got a face for radio
Yeah, you do.
and
Yeah, you do.
podcasting.
That's right. Just don't go watch it on YouTube.
Yeah, good stuff, man. Good thought. Love it.
Yeah. So point. Don't just read to read. Like dig into this stuff. There's some good, rich content out there. Whether it's the Bible, I would encourage you to read the Bible. But like, don't just check books off your list, right? Like dig into these and make life calendar level change. Because there's some very significant lessons that we can learn from that and actions we can take and become the people that we want to become, serve others, love, treat your neighbors kindly, be kind. Don't talk about being good men. Don't argue about it. Just be one and giddy up.
Yep. See ya.